So yesterday I went over two topics, one concerning the imminent release of Donald Trump's so-called peace plan of the century, and the other one being pardon me, I got to scratch my back, being the sin of the Gentiles, calling the Jews Judensal. Well, I want to go ahead and expound on this Judensal phenomenon and why it is unforgivable. Once again, Times of Israel, anti-Semitic Jew pig sculpture at center of German court battle. And as I pointed out yesterday, it's a 700-year-old relief. That means it goes all the way back to the Catholics, and this relief is in the Wittenberg Church building, which is Lutheran. Okay, so what this means is both the Catholics and the Protestants are guilty of this crime. Now, this crime is much bigger than what it appears to be. And I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. You know, right here, high on the wall of a German church where Martin Luther once preached, an ugly remnant of centuries of anti-Semitism is now at the center of a court battle. The so-called Judensau, or Jew pig sculpture, on the town church in Wittenberg dates back to about 1300. And those of you who study history, you know that that was before the Reformation. So it was Catholic to begin with. What I'm saying is that the Protestants' roots are in Catholicism because, guess what? It is still on their building, the Protestants' buildings. Now, what I'm going to do is go to this particular article, A Medieval Trace of German Anti-Judaism. Defamatory sculptures depicting Jews and a pig can be found at many German medieval churches. Cathedral officials in the Bavarian town have now put up an explanatory plaque, but not to everyone's satisfaction. Also, they're going to explain it. Nothing, folks, can justify leaving that plaque up. It is an abomination, and I'll explain to you why. Most visitors at Regensburg Cathedral are unlikely to notice the weathered stone sculpture that's attached to the building's facade. But the 650-year-old so-called Judensau, or Jewish Sau, is a reminder of Germany's long history of persecuting Jews. Similar sculptures can be found in churches throughout the country and Europe. Yes, folks, Europe. And I have talked about the sculpture of the burned down Notre Dame Cathedral that has the ecclesia with a scepter in her hand and a crown on her head, exactly as described in the book of Revelation as the great whore. And synagogue depicting the Jews with a snake, a serpent, wrapped around her eyes so that she cannot see. You see, that's an abomination too. How many more abominations have the churches committed against the Jews? But it's much worse than that, folks. Once again, as I said before, I'll get to that in just a minute. Similar sculptures can be found in churches throughout the country and Europe and were meant to ridicule Jewish people by depicting them as sucking on a sow's tits. While some churches have long put up plaques to explain the sculpture's history, Regensburg's Catholic Church leaders reached a difficult agreement with the city's Jewish community. Why was it so difficult? Why were the Catholics resisting the Jews' insistence on removing it? You know the reason. I know the reason. Let's not fool ourselves here, folks. Cathedral guides would point out the sculpture to groups and explain its origin. Both sides said that they were comfortable with this arrangement, but feeling that a more permanent explanation was called for. Wolfram Kastner, a Munich artist, staged protests against the sculpture in front of the cathedral. For centuries, those depictions have caused murders, robberies, and degradation, Kastner told the reporters, adding that this term Judenzow is used by Nazis to this day. Church officials were less than pleased with Kastner's actions. Why is that? Was it because he was telling the truth? Did the truth make the church officials uncomfortable? And what did they accuse Kastner of? It's sad that someone is trying to disturb the peaceful coexistence of religion in Regensburg, said Philip Hockert, a spokesman for the city's Catholic diocese. Okay. Now they give all kinds of explanations and blah, blah, blah here. Now, if you read the scriptures, you're going to find that when the kingdom comes to Jerusalem, all these artifacts, engraven images, and explanations are going to be destroyed. So if Yehoshua the Messiah is going to come and destroy those things, what are they doing setting up there? Preparing for a new generation of anti-Semitic neo-Nazis. Isn't that the real reason they're still there? Another reason they're still there is because these people secretly and inwardly still believe it. You think I'm wrong? Well, you should have heard of replacement theology by now. Every church that I know of practices replacement theology, even when they claim they don't. The truth is found in Romans 11, you see. So, we'll go to Romans 11. Paul is explaining to the Romans that they're wrong. The way they're thinking, the path that they're traveling down is wrong, and he's warning them if they continue down this path, they're going to be rejected. But they didn't listen. Why did he have to say this? I say then, has Jehovah cast away his people? Jehovah forbid. Why did he have to say that? Because they believed that Jehovah had cast away the Israelites. But he said they were wrong. And he goes on through this entire chapter to explain why they were wrong and that they should be thankful and grateful. But they're not. They were spiteful. I'm going to read this entire chapter. For I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. Jehovah has not cast away his people, which he foreknew. That word foreknew is important. Don't you know what the scripture says about Eliah? How he made intercession to Jehovah against Israel, saying, Jehovah, they have killed your prophets and digged down your altars, and I am left alone, and they seek my life. But what was Jehovah's answer unto him? I have reserved to myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to the image of Jesus. What? What? What did Henry just say? Yes, Jesus! Or Jesus. You see, folks, as I pointed out in several videos before, and you can look them up, you can go find them for yourself. Jesus is the god, the false god of the Druids. He is Baal or Baal, the sun god. Even so at this present time, also, even now, even after the rejection of Yehoshua, the real Messiah, there is a remnant according to the election of grace. So there was a group of people, of Israelites, of Jews, that are a part of the election of grace. Okay? What then? Has Israel not obtained what he seeks for? I mean, Israel has not obtained what it seeks for as a nation, as an election of the nation. Not yet. But it will, as Paul points out in this chapter. But the election, it should say the election of grace has obtained it. And the rest were blinded. Blinded by who? According as it is written, Jehovah has given them a spirit of slumber. Oh, Jehovah gave them the spirit of sleepiness, slumber, blindness. So, what that sculpture on Notre Dame was saying was the one who gave synagogue the spirit of sleeping and blindness is Satan, because they have the serpent wrapped around synagogue's head and covering her eyes. So they're calling Jehovah, our Father in heaven, the serpent. You see why that sculpture was an abomination? Thankless Romans did this. Utterly thankless Romans. Jehovah gave them the spirit of slumber and eyes that they could not see. He blinded them. And you call him the serpent. With your foul, obnoxious, abominable, disgraceful sculptures on your cathedrals. And ears they should not hear unto this day. And even David said, now this is very interesting, because you see what happened to the Jews is going to happen to the Gentiles. Paul said it himself. He said, tribulation and anguish upon every soul of man that does evil, both, or first to the Jew and then the Gentile. Well, the Jews got theirs first at the destruction of Jerusalem. The Gentiles have not got theirs yet. You see, the people of the prince of the Romans was Titus, but the people of the prince of Israel is Yehoshua, and he's going to do to the Romans what the Romans did to the Jews of Jerusalem. You see. And they will call him, the Romans will call him the Antichrist. I'll explain that one too in just a minute. And David said, and this is in Psalm 69:22, let their table be made a snare. Now, Paul says a trap. This actually is a tripline, a stumbling block. This right here, point, retreat, or enter a place of time. Stumbling block? I'm not sure that's what it means, but I don't want to dig too deep into Strong's Concordance because I'm uploading a previous video right now, and this okay. Where do you see it written stumbling block here? Huh? You see that? A place of entrance or entered into a place. A hollow thing or one in which an object can be hidden. That sounds like a snare, a tripline that I've been continually talking about in the past few weeks. And stumbling block into entered a place of time. The point reached or entered a place, same word. So it's a snare, a tripline unto them. Now, but wait a minute. What is the tripline? The tripline is peace and safety. But it says, let their eyes be darkened that they may not see, and bend down together their back. Now this word, it just means mutual irritation. Mutual irritation doesn't mean always or forever. You see, folks, you've got to dig these words up. You got to make sure that you know that the translation is correct. Otherwise, you might find yourself be blinded and bent over forward and find yourself in now it says right here, continuing or ongoingly until when? Well, Paul talks about this, right? It's not forever. Because he just got finished saying, has he cast away his people? Jehovah forbid. Now, like I pointed out, if he rejected the 10 tribes of Israel because of them bowing down to the image of Baal, do you think you Gentiles have a chance if you're bowing down to the image of Jesus or Baal? Now, so Paul says in verse 11, I say, have they stumbled that they should fall? What he's saying is, so they should fall forever. No. No, no, no. But that's what you Romans believe. You believe you replace Israel now, you see. Jehovah forbid. But because of their fall, or temporary fall, salvation has come to the Gentiles. That's the reason why you Gentiles should have been. I think it's too late to say should be now, quite frankly. I'm concerned it might be too late. There's several reasons why I'm concerned it might be too late. One reason is because the time of the Gentiles ended, I believe, in the summer of 2016. I went through great detail in a couple of videos ago using history, dates to prove it. For to provoke them to jealousy. Why would he provoke them to jealousy? To try to bring them back? Now, if the fall of them, or the temporary fall of them, is the riches of the world and the diminishing of them, or loss of them, the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness? Well, the Gentiles don't believe in their fullness. If they did, President Donald Trump, would look at Yehoshua 1 verses 1 through 4 and say, I believe in the fullness of Israel. Therefore, Israel has every right to annex all the land from the river of Egypt to the Euphrates River. But that's not what he's doing. He does not believe in the fullness of Israel. He wants Israel to share Jerusalem with their enemies and call it a united Jerusalem, which is serpent speak. It's speaking with a forked tongue. They are not going to share, Yehoshua the Messiah is not going to share Jerusalem with Israel's enemies. Just ain't going to happen. For I speak to you Gentiles because I am the apostle of the Gentiles. But they didn't listen. It's been nearly 2,000 years and they didn't listen. Or has it been over 2,000 years and they didn't listen? Something to think about. I magnify my office, if by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are of my flesh, and might save some of them, indeed some of them, before the judgment upon Jerusalem that was about to occur. And he talked about that in 1 Thessalonians, right here. Where is it? Okay. Verse 14, for you, brethren, became followers of the ecclesia of Jehovah, which in Judea are in Messiah, not in Christ, but in Messiah, Moshiach. The folks in Judea didn't speak Roman, they spoke Aramaic. And they didn't say Jesus, they said Yehoshua. Learn it. His name is not Baal or Baal. Now, and their own prophets. Which ones? Isaiah was a classic example. And I will get there in just a few minutes. And have persecuted us. And they have not pleased Jehovah, but are contrary to all men. They forbade us to speak to the Gentiles, that the Gentiles might be saved. Wait a minute now. There is a doctrine among the Christians that say the Jews cannot be saved. You don't think that? You think that's false? Go back to the old Catholic doctrines and look at them. Go look at the doctrines of the father of Protestantism, Martin Luther. This is the reason why even after, in the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church, after they forced the Jews to convert, they still persecuted and murdered them because they claimed they could never, ever become righteous or partake of the new covenant. This is what they said. All right? Forbidding us to speak to the Gentiles that they might be saved, to fill up their sins to the full. For the wrath is come upon them in the utmost. And it did. It did. And the destruction of Jerusalem by Titus, the prince of the Romans. Now, if that happened to them back then, because they refused to accept the doctrine, the true doctrine that Israel is going to be saved. Okay, let me start over. All right, if the Jews of that generation, the leaders of the Jews of that generation were rejected because they refused to accept the idea, the doctrine that the Gentiles could be saved just like it is written in Isaiah 49, then how do the Gentiles think that they're going to escape the wrath of Jehovah when they claim that the Jews cannot be saved unless they accept the name of Baal or Jesus? The Jews could never accept the name of Baal or Jesus. It's impossible. And because the Gentiles have this doctrine to this day, you know it and I know it, they are going to be judged out of the words that come out of their own mouth. They claim that anyone who does not accept, as they say, the Lord Jesus Christos as their Savior is going to burn forever and ever and ever. This is what they say. You find this in all these churches. They're going to be judged by the words that come out of their own mouth. I had somebody accuse me of saying, well, what you're saying is those who don't believe in the name of Yehoshua is going to burn forever. I said, no, that is your doctrine. Your doctrine is that those who don't believe in the name of Jesus or Jesus, Christos, is going to burn forever and ever. That's your doctrine. That's what I told him. Now, going back to Romans 11. If the casting away of them be the reconciling of the Gentile world, what then shall the receiving of them be but from life from the dead? What he's saying is the receiving of them is going to be, the receiving of Israel is going to be greater than the reconciling of the Gentile world. Because if the first fruit is holy, the lump is also holy. What does that mean? If you refer to the Jews as Gentile, then you're referring to Israel's Messiah also as Gentile. That's what it means. And if the root is holy, then so are all 12 branches. So then you've called the root Gentile, didn't you? Is that forgivable? We're going to find out. And if some of the branches were broken off and you being a wild olive tree were grafted in among, what is that word? In, on, at, by, and with, alongside them, and alongside them partake of the root. So if you call them Gentile, then you call yourself Gentile. Or you call yourself swine. You see, you're going to be judged by the words that come out of your own mouth. And the fatness of the olive tree, do not boast against the branches. So what is putting a sculpture, a graven image of Ecclesia with a crown on her head and a scepter in her hand, just like the great whore of the book of Revelation, and there is poor pitiful synagogue with a serpent around her eyes, and the 10 Commandments falling out of her hand. What do you call that? Well, that's not just boasting against the branches, but that's being so boastful to the point of unforgivable iniquity. Why am I keep saying unforgivable? Does that make you uncomfortable? Maybe it should. Because if you boast, you don't bear the root, but the root bears you. What he's saying is, if you're boasting against the root. Yes, when you paint a serpent around the head of synagogue, you're actually painting our Father in heaven as the serpent, calling him the devil. And when you paint the Jews as sucking the tits of a swine, you are painting Yehoshua the Messiah as that swine. That's what you're doing. That's what you did. And you churches who are rooted in Protestantism and who are rooted from Catholicism, and you know it. You know if it is or is it not. You know it. The 4 whorish churches of the 1500s who practiced the whoring with the kings of the earth were the Catholic Church, the Lutheran Church, the Calvinists, and the Unitarians. If you have any root in any of those 4 churches, that's you. You will say, then the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off. And you now stand by faith. Do not be high-minded, but fear. That sculpture on Notre Dame does not sound like fear. It sounds like high-mindedness. Those sculptures all over Europe and those Catholic and Protestant churches depicting Yehoshua the Messiah as a swine and the people of Israel as suckling from the swine does not exude humility. That's high-mindedness. Because if Jehovah didn't spare the natural branches, and why didn't he spare them? Two reasons. Worshipping Jesus Krios, Baal, Baal, and for rejecting the Messiah. Take heed lest he also spare not you. You've rejected the Messiah too. Yes, you have. By instead choosing Jesus Krios or Baal, God of the Druids, God of the Romans, God of the Greeks, and God of the Syrians. Look at the mercy and the severity of Jehovah, on which that fell upon them severity, but toward you mercy. Only if you continue in his goodness, mercy, excellence, and uprightness. That graven image of ecclesia and synagogue does not sound like or does not look like goodness, excellence, and uprightness to me. That graven image of Judensau, as you Christians say, does not look like goodness, excellence, and uprightness to me. Judge in your own heart and ask yourself if you have any root in that, and if you do, like I said, it might be too late. Because the time of the Gentiles ended in 2016 on the Roman calendar, according to the numbers that I've come up with. So it might be. I'm not saying it's too late. It might be. And if you were, okay, and if they also, not if they also, no, before they abide no longer in unbelief. Before, while they are still in unbelief is what it's saying, they're going to be grafted in again. And if you read Ezekiel 38 and 39, you will see plain and clearly. Ezekiel 39 and verse 12. He's going to gather them in again, and from that day and forward, they're going to believe. Why? How are they going to believe? Because of what he did to the Gentiles to save them from the Gentiles. See, he knew you Gentiles were going to do this to Israel. Prophesied about it in advance in Isaiah 49. I'll get to that in just a minute. For Jehovah is able to graft him back in again. And if you were cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, how much better chance do you think these Israelites are going to have being put back in their own place? Greater than you in their own olive tree. I'm going to go momentarily to Isaiah 49, and I'm going to prove to you that you have rejected, you Gentiles have rejected Israel's Messiah. Let's see if I can find it here. Thus saith Jehovah, not Jesus, not the Lord. Jehovah. He's the Redeemer, the redeeming kinsman of Israel. That's right. You see, if he's a kinsman, and you call the Jew Judensau, then you're calling our Father in heaven Judensau. And the holy, the Kadosh, to him who man despised. Who despised? Who despised him? And then it says, to him the Goy abhorred. That's you, the Gentiles. You abhor him. That's the reason why you refuse to use the name Yehoshua. for the Savior, for Jehovah's promise of salvation to Israel. You refuse to use that name. You will not do it because you hate him. You abhor him. Yes, that's proof enough. Now I'll go back to Romans 11. But I would not, brethren, verse 25, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part is happened to Israel until the time of the Gentiles comes to the full, or comes to an end. 77s ended in 2016. So what are we waiting for? We are waiting for the trap, the snare upon the Gentiles. There was a trap and a snare laid for the Israelites, for the Jews of Jerusalem, beginning around 66, 67 CE. There's a trap being laid now for the Gentiles, and that trap is peace and safety. 1 Thessalonians 5. Like I said, please be patient because I'm uploading a video right now. But the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write to you, for you yourselves know perfectly that the day of Jehovah's wrath so comes as a thief in the night. For when they, who is they, the Gentiles, say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon us as travail upon a woman, and they shall not escape. Take a look around you. And as I pointed out yesterday, you can see in the scripture that the first one that's going to cross over that trap is Jordan, the people of Moab. And they're going to drag, because of them, all the other nations are going to be dragged across that trap too. I believe that the trap is being laid right now. I could be wrong, but I believe it's being laid right now. Let's go back to Romans 11. And so all Israel shall be saved. And you Christians, you use that word rapture, which is apparently a Roman word for slip away. I don't like using that word because number one, it's Roman, and number two, before Darby and some of the other guys came up with that word, it was a term used for like a teenage girl when she sees a little teenage boy. Rapture. Now, but if you read Daniel 12 and verse 1, it says that Daniel's people, the people of Israel, will slip away. That's right. And guess what? Paul agrees. All Israel will slip away, as it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away unholiness from Jacob. Because this is my covenant, the new covenant. Jeremiah 31 verses 31 through 34, Hebrews 8 verses 8 through 12, please read it. Unto them, unto Israel, when I shall take away their sins. That is, this is the new covenant for Israel, when he takes away their sins and remembers them no more. In verse 34 of Jeremiah 34, and verse 12 of Hebrews 8. That's it right there. This is the new covenant for Israel. Now, concerning the gospel, they might be enemies for your sakes. But concerning the election, they are the beloved for the patriarchs' sakes. So they are the elect. And they will be gathered by the angels from the four winds of heaven because they are the elect. They will slip away, just exactly how it is written in Daniel 12 and verse 1. Why? Because the gifts and the calling of Jehovah cannot be changed. As you in times past have not believed Jehovah, you currently have obtained mercy because of their unbelief. Even now, even so, because of that, those who not now believe are going to obtain mercy because you obtained mercy. But you don't believe in mercy, do you? You love that statue, Gentile, don't you? You love that statue of Ecclesia, the great whore, lording it over synagogue, don't you? Well, let me tell you what's going to happen to you. No. Better yet, let the prophet Isaiah point out what's going to happen to you. Right here where it says, Jehovah, the Redeemer of Israel, and his Holy One, the ones that men have despised, the ones that the Gentiles abhorred, he will go from a suffering servant to one that has dominion. Kings are going to arise and princes are going to bow down and worship at his feet. Now let's look at this. Let's go down here further. So when Israel slips away back to the Holy Land, it says this: your children are going to make haste. They're going to come to the Holy Land quickly. And the destroyers of the land, those that made you waste, shall flee from you. Lift up your eyes round about and look. Look at all the people of Israel being gathered up and come back to Israel. As I live, says Jehovah. He swore by himself. You think you can undo it with your graven images? With your Gentile image, you think? You shall surely clothe with ornaments and bind them on you as a bride, because your waste and desolate places in the land of destruction shall be even now too small by the reason of inhabitants, and those that swallowed you up, Rome, will be far, far away. The children which you shall have, after you lost the others, shall say again in your ears, this place is too small, give us more room. Then you shall say in your heart, the land, the Earth, shall say in its heart, who bore these children? Where did they come from? Seeing that I have lost my children, I'm desolate, a captive, and been tossed to and fro. And who brought these here? I was left alone. Where have they been? And then Jehovah will say, I will lift my hand to the Gentiles and set up a standard for my people Israel. Lifting up the hand to the people of Gentiles is striking them down. Ezekiel 38 and 39. And they and your sons and daughters will come in the bosom, and your daughters shall be carried upon shoulders. And look what's going to happen here. And kings shall be your nursing fathers, or they will confirm and support. They will have to bring their loot to support Israel. And their queens shall be your nursing mothers, They shall bow down to you with their face toward the earth and lick up the dust from off of your feet. Which queens? Well, all the kings and queens of Europe, but especially that queen of that graven image, Ecclesia, that was on Notre Dame, with a crown on her head and a scepter in her hand, lording it over synagogue. She will have that crown taken away from her. She will have that scepter taken away from her and forced to bow down and lick the dust off of synagogue's feet. And you shall know Jehovah. Better to learn to know Jehovah now than to learn it the hard way later. For those that wait for him will not be ashamed. Shall the prey be taken from the mighty, or the lawful captive slip away? Yes, the captives will slip away. Synagogue will slip away from the clutches of Ecclesia. And they will no more utter the words Judensow in their contempt of the Jews and the real Jewish Messiah. Shall the prey be taken from the mighty? Oh, I just read that. This is what Jehovah says. The captives of the mighty will be taken away, and the prey of the terrible shall slip away. So the prey of the Romans are going to slip away. When? After the time of the Gentiles has come to an end. Has the time of the Gentiles come to an end? I believe most assuredly, yes. All we're waiting for now is the trap to be set, and I believe it's being set right now as I am speaking. For I will strive with him that strove with you, O Israel, and I will save Yeshua, I will Yeshua your children, Israel. And I will feed them that oppress you with their own flesh. In other words, now folks, you got to listen to me here. This is no joke. This is no laughing matter, folks. Gentiles, put your sackcloth on. Start mourning now. Start fasting now. Because here's what's going to happen. When it says that he's going to feed them that oppress you with their own flesh, there is going to be famine in the land of the Gentiles. There's going to be no food to eat. There's going to be 3.5 years of no rain by the hand of the two witnesses that are written about in Isaiah 66 and Revelation, is it 11 or 12? 11. Revelation 11. 3.5 years of no rain. People will have nothing to eat. So they're going to be forced to practice cannibalism. That's what it means when it says, I will feed those that oppressed you with their own flesh. Get ready. It's going to happen, folks. And they're going to drink human blood like they drink wine today. And all flesh shall know Jehovah. Folks, you don't want to learn to know Jehovah the hard way. shall know Jehovah will deliver, and your Redeemer, the kinsman of Israel. You cannot say anything against the Jews, against Israel, without saying it against our Father in heaven or against the Messiah, because he is the mighty one of Jacob. Gentiles, prepare for 3.5 years of no rain. It's coming. You're going to practice cannibalism on each other. It's coming. And the reason why it's going to happen is because you persecuted. Your forefathers persecuted Israel, called them Gentile, rose up against them and murdered them generation after generation after generation, and forced them to put the yellow star on their left shoulder. You did. You see, I'm with them. These are my people. So you better ask yourself what your religion is rooted in. I'm going to tell you, all you Sunday keepers, and even some of you Sabbath keepers, your religion is rooted in Catholicism and Protestantism, the purveyors of abominable boastfulness against Jehovah, the creator of us all, the kinsman redeemer of Israel. Now, Hebrews 10. Verse 26. For if we sin willfully after we have received the knowledge of the truth, and I have told you the knowledge of the truth is Yehoshua, is the Messiah's name, not that abominable Baal, Jesus, Krios. Yehoshua is the Moshiach. If you sin willfully after receiving the knowledge of the truth, and there remains no more sacrifice for sins. But the only thing that's going to be left is a certain fearful looking for the day of judgment and fiery indignation, which shall devour the adversaries. Which adversaries? We just saw which adversaries in Isaiah 49. Israel's adversaries. Now those who despise the law of Moses died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses. How much worse is the punishment going to be? Who was considered worthy? Who trod down underfoot the Son of Jehovah? When you say Gentile in reference to the Jews, and raise up your graven image of a sow with the Jews sucking on a sow, you have trodden underfoot. Your forefathers have trodden underfoot, and so have you, the Son of Jehovah, in rejecting his name for the name of Baal, the false sun god of the Druids, Jesus. And you counted the blood of the new covenant wherewith he was sanctified a holy thing. What do you mean by that? Romans 11. For this is my covenant with Jacob when I shall take away their sins. You don't agree with this. Throughout all these centuries, millennia now, you persecuted Israel, rejecting the new covenant. So what Paul is saying is, has counted the blood of the covenant wherein he was sanctified an unholy thing, and you were despiteful to the Spirit of grace. You showed no mercy to the Jews. You despised the Jews. You despised their Messiah by calling the Jews' Messiah swine, and you despised the Father, the kinsman of Israel, by calling him the serpent with your graven images. And it's still done to this day. For we know him that said, vengeance belongs to me, and I will repay, says Jehovah. And again, Jehovah will decide. He's going to decide, and it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living Elohim. I hope you read Isaiah 49 again. Extreme judgment is coming upon the Gentiles, folks. I hope that I have made this point very clear. It is necessary for everyone to know what's going to happen.